do the bring up BLM riots again, we watched dozens of people were killed in these riots, mostly in blue states. And the local leaders, whether it's state or local officials, did not adequately control and use local law enforcement. So even if you think it's wrong to send in the National Guard, this idea that, well, we should have just let Gavin Newsom handle it, they could totally be trusted to shut down rioting. I mean, we seem to have some pretty recent history contradicting the reliability of that notion, Destiny.
So, okay, as a conservative, it's incredibly strange for me to hear you say we don't trust the states to handle anything.
And no one's saying we don't trust the states. He was specific. We don't trust blue states. So there's no doubt about it. But as we all know, Destiny's still his swiveling jaw is going to be working overtime trying to gaslight and lie and say, no, actually, it's the Republicans. It's the Republicans' political surgeon, Donald Trump specifically. That, you know, that's what he's going to be saying, and we're going to have to rely on actual social justice warrior to actually be the common sense one. So let's see, we'll get into it. This looks like it's a pretty good place to start, so here we go.
Because he was appointed to some private council with 100 other people 10 years ago. There's actually a secret Democrat. We saw the pardoning of all the J6ers. At what point do Republicans ever disavow violence on their side? There's no virtue to be gained.
Well, I mean,
constantly begging for forgiveness.
Yeah, see, I mean, right off the bat, when do they ever disavow violence? Oh, I don't know. How about everyone that disavowed the January 6th stuff? I disavowed it. A lot of people, like most Republicans or right wingers, disavowed it. We didn't say, oh no, actually, it's a good thing. No, it's good that they that things got violent there. It's good. Nope, disavowed it all. I have no problem saying that. Democrats, however, will not disavow the violence. They will make excuses for it or say, well, this is just the language of the unheard.
Forgiveness from them. So no, I don't think it's the same thing. I'm totally willing to disavow all political violence, but conservatives aren't.
Well, so Sean, I'll bring you in here, but I'll say I criticize the misinformation about the Minnesota shooting. I've criticized pardoning violent January 6th protesters. And I think a lot of Republicans have, of course, condemned the violence in Minnesota. Obviously, some have spread misinformation, the Mike Lees of the world, and I think it's really shameful. But Sean, your response to the argument that...
Yeah, I mean, like, it's weird to talk about asymmetry when you have assassination attempts on Brett Kavanaugh, you have celebrities calling for bombing the White House, you have an assassination attempt on President Trump, you have all these instances of violence that's deflected, denied, and covered up by the left-wing media. I mean, even in the same time period as January 6th, you had the most destructive riots in American history. And what do we see? Time magazine, I believe, publishes an article about how it's, mostly peaceful, because what we did was expand the denominator and the stats by including Facebook meetups that had 6 or more people in our stat group in order to deflect away from the most violent riots in history. That same article highlighted that there was nearly 600 violent riots post George Floyd in just the first 90 days after that. So that wasn't even the totality, but we still hear about January 6th. It's a constant thing that is displayed in the media. Trump gets called out for it. And by the way, deservedly so, for pardoning violent people. But the idea that it's like a clean disavowal on the left is absurd. Like, one of the major talking points about the recent LA riots was that, the riots aren't that big of a deal because they're not literally rioting everywhere across Los Angeles. The riots are only happening in certain areas. And it's like, oh, wow.
Like, neighborhood.
Yeah, like, Hurricane Katrina only hit New Orleans. The rest of the country didn't even rain. So I don't know why we talked about Hurricane Katrina when it hit New Orleans. It doesn't make any sense. So, like, this is a constant thing. And yes, there's hypocrisy on both sides. And there's also conspiracy theorism that's probably worse on the Republican side. I mean, you have the Minnesota guy, and then you have the Nancy Pelosi guy that Steven mentioned. So there is problems for sure, but the idea that the left clean disavows violence is absurd.
I mean,
like, they often share it.
I mean, yeah, that's reality. That's the reality of it. I don't know how, like, seriously, Destiny is ballsy. Like, he really wants the exposure, or I don't know if he gets paid for this or anything. I don't know what he gains from doing this. But any lefty is absolutely ballsy for taking a debate where he has to say, no, actually, the left doesn't condone violence. It's actually the right. Like, dude, come on, dude, come on.
Just as a quick, this will always happen, and there's nothing I can do to counter this because it's just always brought up. Every time I talk about MAGA or the Republicans or the right, I will talk about, you brought up earlier, Mike Lee. sitting U.S. senator, or you bring up like President Donald Trump will say these particular things, and then the counter's like, well, what about what was on Twitter? What about what Time published? These are not the political lawmakers. These are not the elected people.
Yeah, they are.
Maxine Waters.
Yep.
When the BLM riots happened, Biden had to disavow the violence when he was running for office. He had to have a clean disavowal saying violence wouldn't be accepted. We bring up the LA riots now. Gavin Newsom, in no unclear terms, said, if you are committing violent acts, you will be arrested. He didn't say these are secret MAGA operatives, which is what Trump would say. Why does January 6th get brought up over and over again? Because Trump still contends that the election was stolen from him in 2020, right? And these are from the president or from political leaders, not published in Time or in the New York Times or in the Washington Post or on Twitter.
John,
the asymmetry there is insane.
What about the fiery but mostly peaceful thing where they're literally standing in front of the burning buildings and then they're like, oh yeah, this is fiery but mostly peaceful. And the language of the unheard, I'm pretty sure was coined by politicians. I don't know the exact, like the specific politician that coined it, but I'm pretty sure that came from people in government. And Gavin Newsom, oh yeah, he might have said, hey, listen, guys, don't burn down the buildings, please. That's not nice. He might have said that, but then why did he get pissed off when Donald Trump sent in the National Guard? He was more outraged that Donald Trump sent in the National Guard than he was at people graffitiing up his buildings, burning cars, being just a public threat by getting in the roads, shutting down freeways. He was more upset about Donald Trump wanting to send in the National Guard than he was at those protesters. So yeah, great. He might have said that he didn't like this, he didn't like the violence and stuff, but I don't think he really meant it because his actions didn't show it. He didn't send in the National Guard. He just sent in the police, which, by the way, I later heard were told not to really do anything. So Gavin Newsom's full of crap.
I think that's a legitimate point.
Karen Bass, Maxine Waters, representative in Congress, saying that there was no violence that she saw. Like, we hear this constantly, that there was nothing breaking out, even from Gavin Newsom, who did like just say that you would be arrested, or Karen Bass. They were saying that there was no violence until after the National Guard was deployed. That's just not true. And blaming the National Guard being deployed in response to rioting for the rioting is absurd. And again, it's all about shifting it to the other side.
No, he said that there was no purpose for
That's an excellent point, James. Yes, Destiny got a lot of criticism from a lot of people because he said he didn't give a shit man, I'm so sorry. I keep forgetting his name. My apologies, because I don't want to be disrespectful, but you know, he laughed at the guy who got shot instead of Trump, the guy who died, the firefighter. You know, he said, I don't care. Who gives a shit? Like, yeah, he didn't disavow the violence. He said, well, you got what was pretty much coming to you being at a MAGA Trump rally. So yeah, excellent point there, James.
National Guard because they had it under control.
They were saying
that there was no violence. He said that it was ridiculous for Trump to claim the violence had been cleared up when the National Guard had been deployed, because the National Guard hadn't even been deployed when the violence had been cleared up. So the whole point was that Trump illegally mobilized the National Guard. He federalized California, which was illegal. If you read the underlying statute that he cites as EO, he didn't have the authority to do that without the cooperation of the governor. And that was the whole purpose. Again, Newsom, in no unclear terms, condemned the violence, said you'll be arrested for it, and they've acted as such. He never, agreed with or supported any of it. And there's no equivocation there.
Yeah, there is no equivocation there because these politicians were downplaying this. They were saying it was just in a little area, and they were blaming the post-deployment of the National Guard as the thing that caused the violence, even though that was the response.
Yeah,
the deployment of the National Guard was to ratchet up the violence. That was the goal.
To protect federal buildings.
No, they needed.
Sending the National Guard was going to ratchet up. It was going to ratchet up the violence. Oh, we need to send the federal firefighters or something. We need to send outside firefighters. No, don't do that. You're just going to cause the fires to get worse. Make that make sense, people.
Being targeted.
LAPD is the third largest policing force in the United States. So they did not need the National Guard to go and defend.
Pretty sure they were the second.
No, I think New York Police Department, I think Chicago are larger. But the idea that the National Guard needed to be federalized on day two and brought out was ridiculous.
Well, I guess, Destiny, the reason
Only someone that supports this violence and stuff, that's only someone would say that. By the way, didn't Trump also want the National Guard there at January 6th as well? Gee, why didn't we get the National Guard on January 6th? Why?
reason I'll challenge you on that is I think in this case, you
'Cause
know,
you're an
maybe
idiot.
these riots wouldn't have gotten out of control, but we did watch, and I know I'm not trying to do the bring up BLM riots again. We watched dozens of people were killed in these riots, in mostly in blue states, and the local leaders, whether it's state or local officials, did not adequately control and use local law
Exactly.
enforcement. So even if you think it's wrong to send in the National Guard, this idea that, well, we should have just let Gavin Newsom handle it, they could totally be trusted to shut down rioting. I mean, we seem to have some pretty recent history contradicting the reliability of that notion, Destiny.
So, okay, as a conservative, it's incredibly strange for me to hear you say we don't trust the states to handle anything.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. But aren't you guys against the states having the right to choose about like, abortions or not and stuff? And no one's saying we don't trust the states. He was specific. We don't trust blue states, blue governors, Democrat governors to stop it. That's what he said. He was specific. He didn't say we don't trust any of the states. He said we don't trust the Democrat states, Destiny. I hope they don't let him weasel his way out of that.
We need the federal government to come in and bring the National Guard in or the Marines to do policing work. That is an astounding claim that you could perpetually generate energy with rolling federal founding fathers in their graves with these types of claims, because the whole point of our system to break up police and to break up other things between states' powers of the federal government is kind of a bedrock principle of our country. Firstly. Secondly, Donald Trump himself was complaining that you know what, you can't send in the National Guard without them asking for it. So, you know, what could I do? That was a complaint that he had. So why is he doing it now, you know, on his own impetus?
Because the freaking towns are burning down, dude. And the governor wasn't doing enough to stop it. Jeez, like how these people are so deranged. I can't imagine. Oh man, like what world do these people live in? And there's people that agree with Destiny. Oh, yeah, he makes a lot of sense here. Like they were like LA was like burning. People weren't safe going there. People weren't safe in there. They were shutting down highways. And Newsom or Karen Bass did not do enough to stop it. They didn't. They think that these people were justified in their rage. Again, language of the unheard. And so Donald Trump wants to stop it, and you guys get pissed off at it.
I do agree that there were a lot of problems related to the BLM riots, for sure. I think every liberal has had to a million times, despite the fact that conservatives will never acknowledge violence on their side. But
no, it's because you guys never acknowledge the violence on your side. That's why you guys don't acknowledge it at all. You guys have nothing to say for the BLM riots. That's why we bring it up. And you guys are hypocrites. You guys call it the language of the unheard. Oh, but I can't call January 6th the language of the unheard. Oh, no. Oh, no, you see, in the BLM riots, they were angry about George Floyd, and they were just showing their anger at this injustice. Okay, well, January 6th, all those people there thought there was an injustice. They thought the election was being stolen from them, all right? And it doesn't matter if it was true or not, just like it doesn't matter if they thought that, like, even if it weren't true, and by the way, I do think it was true. I do think there were shenanigans in the 2020 election. But even if that wasn't true at all, these people thought it. That's why they did that. That's why they were there, because they thought that there was an election interference. Just like in 2020, how those people rioting thought that black people were just getting killed by cops, specifically George Floyd, and that there is an injustice going on. All right. So they could get away with using language of the unheard language. But, oh, I can't say that for January 6th. It shows your blatant hypocrisy that this isn't about any sort of like, oh, you're just against violence or something. No. It's just you just don't like it when the right does it. But you're completely okay when the left does it. When the left does it, good. When the right does it, bad. That's all it is. That's the only principle you guys live by.
to pretend that that's going to play out every single time now, it's like the LAPD was deployed. The LAPD was,
Oh yeah, the LAPD that was getting concrete thrown at him.
It's under control. To pretend that now we have to send in the National Guard every single time there's a riot in every single
No one
city
made
and
that
state. Is that
argument.
the new rule? Like, that's insane.
This is like the paradox right here is like if you deploy law enforcement and they prevent a riot, then people will say that the force used is disproportionate to the situation. However, if law enforcement pulls back because it's a protest and we don't expect it to be a riot, when the riot breaks out, people end up blaming law enforcement for not having a strong enough response. So you're kind of in a damned if you do, damned if you don't, because we don't know what the alternative is. We can guess, like, if these protests got as big as the Black Lives Matter riots, then the danger could have gotten to that level as well, but we won't know because there was a strong enforcement from the LAPD followed up by the National Guard almost immediately after this stuff broke out. So it's like, you know, this becomes a purposely like pointless argument because you don't know what the alternative was. Like, we
So just
have
to be
to guess
clear,
based on history.
I just want to hear this said in plain English. You believe the National Guard should be deployed at every single riot.
I
Then
didn't
from
say
now
every
on.
single riot,
Yeah.
but if
So
you
which
have,
one? You just said that if a riot is stopped by police beforehand, then we won't know if it was an over response or not. So what is
Well, I
this?
So Destiny's trying to now he's straw manning the argument.
that
Well, we're running here.
if you use force and that deters the rioting, then people will say that the police are too heavy-handed and all of this was totally
Destiny knows that he's cucked here, you know, and I know like it's a familiar spot for him to be in. He's used to it, but he knows that he's cucked and he's cooked because I could see him. He looks like he's getting nervous, and I think he's purposely straw manning the argument so he could think of better replies here. But that's why I said, I was like, I think Destiny, like, he's an idiot for taking this debate. There's no argument like for reality, like against reality. The reality is Democrats and the lefties, they condone violence. They do, as long as it's there, as long as it aligns with their political leanings. That's it. As long as it agrees with them, they're all for it. If it doesn't agree with them, then they're against it.
totally unnecessary.
Who
But
cares?
if you
People
don't
will
use
say
enough
that. Then you
force,
pay electoral
then people will
consequences.
say that the police didn't act in time. So you have to basically guess.
Or instead of guessing, what if we said that the governors of the states, the people who are close to the issue, they have the right exclusively to ask the president to federalize the National Guard and bring them in? Maybe we should just like go with the laws as written. Wouldn't that make sense?
I mean, they do have the right to deploy the guard, but what do you do when you have a governor that's derelict in your duty to deploy the National Guard?
Then the governor would get impeached or voted out of office.
I get your point. They'd face
Recall
political
impeachment.
consequences.
But yeah, there's a process in place for that. It can't
Oh yeah, they would. We already tried to impeach Newsom. It didn't work.
be. It cannot be that the small government Republicans are all of a sudden okay with a federal police force. The same people who aren't even okay with a federal ID now want the federal police force to do riot control all over the country. That's just not. We can't live in that world. Not in the United States, at least. Not without significantly changing the way we view
I get
policing
your
in our
point,
system.
Destiny, but is there any limit to like, because you're essentially saying that, for example, in 2020, should they have sent in the National Guard? No, let the cities burn, let dozens of people be killed, and then the local political consequences can affect the governors who refused the National Guard or who didn't exert law enforcement hard enough. But should a president really be expected to wait and watch massive suffering unfold and to just say, well, they'll hold Gavin Newsom accountable for it? Also, presidents get blamed, and I think rightly and wrongly, for basically everything that happens in the country under their watch. So I think Trump would also have gotten blamed if a dozen people had been killed in LA and he had just sat on his hands, and Gavin Newsom said no to the National Guard. So he said, okay, we won't send him in. And maybe that would have been the correct thing to do in some way.
Yeah, no, obviously, yeah. Donald Trump got blamed for not sending in the National Guard for January 6th. Remember? That was his thing. Oh, he should have sent in the National Guard. And then Donald Trump was like, I asked for the National Guard. They said no. Pelosi said no. And everyone's like, oh, no, not true. Conspiracy theories, not true. Nancy Pelosi can't even do that. And then Nancy Pelosi admitted later on, oh, yeah, I should have sent in the National Guard. And they're absolutely right. This got brought up in my debate with Pisco when we were talking about the BLM riots. And then I was like, well, the Democrats didn't do enough to shut it down. And he was like, the Democrats? But wasn't Donald Trump in charge? Shouldn't he have done more? And I was like, yeah, you know what? You're right. He should have done more. I completely agree with you. He should have done more. But if he would have sent in the National Guard, you would have had a problem with it. And he said, I would have had a problem with it. And I was like, exactly. You would have had a problem with it. And I said, so, but if the Democrat governor would have sent in a National Guard, you would have not had a problem with it. And he's like, no. He straight up admitted to me that if Trump would have sent it in, bad. If the Democrat governor would have sent it in, good. So this isn't about it's not about the sending in the National Guard. It's basically just if Trump does it.
Ways, but is he really just supposed to let people die and then trust the electoral process to hold people accountable for it, Stephen?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
I don't know what else to say. I mean,
Wow.
I'm glad I read, I guess, my Federalist Papers. Yes, these would be the arguments that yes, you allow the process to play itself out. We have 50 different states. We didn't win the Federalist Papers. But we have 50 different states now where people can try their own experiments. They can vote for who they want when it comes to governor, when it comes to mayor. And if they don't like the way that the process is playing out, then they have the right to either recall vote or vote in new people next time. But the idea that the federal government ought to be the one to come in and take care of local policing is not okay. And the president doesn't just have to sit by. I know that Trump has somehow brainwashed every American into believing the president can either be the most heavy-handed person in the world or completely derelict in duty. Not to say that you two are necessarily saying that, but there's a ton of middle ground that the president can have too. The president can get on his, bully pulpit and he can tell people, I have things that I can make available to you. I can help you with this, or look at what this state is doing and how they've effectively managed things, right? I think Abbott, didn't he federalize his, or didn't he already deploy his National Guard in Texas ahead of expected protests for the No King's Day? Now, whether you think that's right or wrong, in Texas, they have the right to do that. And he did do that. I didn't hear about any huge protests or problems in Texas, so maybe it worked for them. So you have the right to vote for that. I wouldn't want a president to come in and supersede my governor or local official when it comes to local policing.
Oh, well, how about when Joe Biden didn't allow Governor Abbott to enforce their borders? Remember that? Like they had barbed wire or something there, and President Biden made him like take it down. It almost caused like a little civil war going on because other states were siding with Abbott, and Joe Biden was like, "Oh shit, fuck, what am I gonna do? Fuck, well, I don't want to allow him to secure the borders, but people are really pissed off at me. What should I do?" And so then that's when they came up with the stupid security border bill, with the border bill, because it was a bloated bill that didn't really do a lot to secure the border at all. And then when the Republicans voted against it because it was just nothing but bloat and it would have done nothing, Biden and the Republicans, which also Destiny is Biden and the Democrats, I should say. And by the way, Destiny is one of these people will say, well, they try to secure the border. They try to secure the border, but they voted against the bill because Donald Trump told them to vote against the bill. It was clever. Really clever Democrat tactic. But going back to Destiny's point of the president intervening in the governors protecting their states, well, what does he have to say about that? I hope someone brings that up.
Stuff any more than a conservative would or should.
I mean, Democratic governments have done a whole lot of that, superseding state level policy decisions, though. No.
Give me one example.
Well, you think of like healthcare policies, federal government trying to tell them how you attach to federal funds. You have to have this expansion of Obamacare comes with all these strings attached. You have to have these different things. You think of like highways.
Sure, but I think this is fundamentally different because these are actions that are passed by the Congress, right? Which is designed to be an arduous and painful process. So if it's passed by Congress and then it's done from there, I think that would be significantly different. We wouldn't be having this conversation if Congress had passed an amendment to I forget which U.S. code it is that allows the president to unilaterally dispatch the National Guard, then we wouldn't be having the same conversation. I would say I disagree with Trump doing it, but at least it's not illegal, I guess.
Sean,
but,
do you have thoughts on the legality of it?
It still has to be adjudicated. I mean, I believe they were citing some provision of law that allows them to do it in order to enforce federal law. And there is precedent of sending in the National Guard over the state's objection. It comes from the Eisenhower administration, where he used the National Guard in order to forcibly integrate schools because your local politicians were against racial integration. So there is precedent that backs this.
I wonder how
there is a
Destiny feels
law.
about
There's
that.
an argument. Obviously, that's why they're adjudicating in the courts. Eventually, the courts will make their ruling on this particular case. But the idea that it has absolutely no justification or no precedent in history is just not true. And again, specifically, they were being used in large part to protect the federal building. So like for the purposes of upholding federal law, like it seems to align. But again, it's going to be adjudicated. I forget what the court case is right now.
I don't want to get too bogged down in the National Guard stuff, but I get what both of you are saying. I want to talk about another form.
Well, just to be clear, the National Guard stuff is very important because it was a huge overreach in federal power. And again, this idea that it'll be adjudicated, yeah, Trump has said that over and over and over again. They don't even try to remain within the bounds of the law. They break the law over and over again, saying, well, the courts will figure it out, or they'll say they'll ignore the courts. And now that they've been getting slapped down by the courts over and over and over again, they're trying to make arguments like injunctions should be impossible, or we don't actually think.
Problem with federal injunctions that even many Democrats, the Chuck Schumers of the world, acknowledge. Now, the answer is not to defy them or ignore them, but I think the system, it's too easy to just find one judge somewhere in the country and get a policy block nationwide. And there's forum shopping and all sorts of issues with that. So I'm not sure all their grievances there are illegitimate, but I want to move to the topic. Sorry.
Okay, sure. Just to be clear, getting rid of the concept of injunction is an outrageous idea and completely defangs the government. I'm not saying get rid
of the concept of an injunction. I'm saying
that's what the government was arguing. The Solicitor General was arguing in front of the Supreme Court. That
I'm not signing on to that, but there's been legislation proposed in Congress, bipartisan legislation, to narrow the scope and the ease with which you can forum shop to get national injunctions. Now, our next topic I want to talk about is this new thing among Democrats, and your mileage may vary on this. Some of them are different situations, but whether it's Alex Padilla kind of approaching the stage and interrupting Kristi Noem's press conference, that one I think is a lot murkier.
Hold on, I'm trying to see. I don't really care. Well, I guess we'll see how this goes.
But we just had this incident with the New York City comptroller and mayoral candidate Brad Lander basically attempting to physically link arms with and refuse to let go an illegal immigrant who was being arrested by ICE. He was then arrested and charged with, or not charged actually, but he was arrested on suspicion of obstructing justice. And then he was then released without charges. I'm actually going to insert the full video of what happened here because I think it's highly telling, so people can watch for themselves.
What are freaking idiots, dude? Like linking arms with an illegal immigrant. This dude, he's like, no, this is our voter right here. We can't let him go. It's one less voter for us.
Guys, back up, guys. Back up. I understand. You're pregnant, but I need you to back up. If you're interfering with this arrest, we're going to be back up, guys. Back up, guys.
This is not legal to take someone without a judicial warrant.
Please don't put him in the elevator and then claim you have the warrant.
Retard is gonna retard, am I right? Look at this freaking idiot.
So show it. Let us see it. So let us see it before you take the warrant.
Was our country always this retarded? I didn't start paying closely to politics until probably like 2014 or 15. That's when I really started to pay attention to stuff. But beyond that, I was kind of just oblivious and ignorant to politics and stuff. Were we always this retarded? Genuine question. I mean, I know there's been retarded things that have happened, but have we always been this retarded? Or is it because maybe the internet is a thing now? And we could watch videos just in our phones, in our pockets, that maybe we're just more exposed to this retardedness. Is that what's going on? I don't know. Any thoughts in there in the chat? I just remember, man, our politicians, they're smart, they know stuff. And then you see them being retarded like this. And I just think, man, what a fucking retard. Why the fuck is he doing this? Who the fuck cares? Let him go back to his fucking country. What are you doing? Don't you got something better to do? Anything?
Step back. No! Take it back. Take it back. Step back. Step back. Please, step back. Step back, guys. Step back. Step back. Step back.
U.S. citizens. You don't have the authority to arrest U.S. citizens.
They should. What they should do is you should be like, if you act retarded like this guy and try to do shit like that, you're getting sent back too. Sent back where? I'm a citizen. Okay, fine. Just sent somewhere else. Deport this guy too.
You don't have, I'm not obstructing. I'm standing right here in
Send him
the
to
hallway.
Canada.
I have to see the judicial warrant.
You're arresting them.
Please step back.
You're trying to get here. It's ridiculous.
Step back, guys. You can
You
take
don't
pictures,
have
but
the
please stay
authority
back.
to arrest U.S. citizens asking for a judicial warrant.
Stay back, please. Stay back, please.
Press, we go too. Sorry. No way. I'm safe. Where are you taking him? Hello?
Since you have no authority to arrest U.S. citizens,
Where are you taking the controller?
and with what authority?
Why are you arresting the city controller and where are you taking him? No!
Number one's gonna go with him, all right? Hang on, where's number one? Hold on. Brett, this is number one right here, all right? Thank
All right,
you.
we get it. Guy's being retarded.
So
All right.
the response to this from some on the left of center politically has been to decry it as an act of fascism. We have TikTok influencer Harry Sisson writing that in Trump's America, elective
Well, of
officials
course he
who
says
he
that.
disagrees
Who cares
with
what
get
Harry Sisson has to
manhandled
say? Of
and
course he's going to say
arrested.
that.
This is as
I like how he has
dictatorial as it
NPCs in the
gets.
corner.
Zohran Mamdani, who
Oh.
we'll come to later,
The dude that just got elected to the governor. Oh, good to see you, Zohran Mamdani. You don't mess with the Zohran.
he wrote that New York City Comptroller Brad Lander was just arrested by Trump's ICE agents because he asked to see a judicial warrant. This is fascism. Stephen, I'm not so sure it is. And I've been critical of the way the Trump administration has handled some of these situations. I thought the law enforcement officers went overboard.
I kind of want to see more of actual Justice Warrior, see what he's got to say on this. I know it's this dude's channel, Brad Palumbo's channel. But is he a moderator or is he also debating Destiny? Like, what's going on here?
On Senator Padilla. But in this video, you see this comptroller literally physically link arms with an illegal immigrant who ICE is trying to arrest and refuse to let him go. That just seems like, to me, clear obstruction of justice. So is arresting him for it fascism?
In my opinion, I
Yeah.
think that we don't have clear leaders right now for our kind of like activist movements. And so we don't have a clear message. And so nobody really knows exactly what's going on. I think that the argument over what's going on with ICE gets hijacked, I think, unfortunately, by people masquerading as moderates or masquerading as having reasonable opinions on both sides of this. I think on the right, you get a lot of people who are in favor of ICE because it's the federal law, and blah, blah, but they really just want to deport basically everybody they can. And then on the left, you've got people who are saying that this is an overreach of presidential power and
Anybody that's illegal, Destiny. Keyword illegal.
but really they just don't want to deport anybody, and they think that ICE is like should be abolished. In my opinion, I think that if you want to link arms with some guy who you think is getting deported unfairly, not illegally, but unfairly, you just don't think it should be happening, I think you have the right to do that. I think it could be a beautiful form of civil disobedience, but part of civil disobedience is getting arrested. When you get arrested for obstructing a federal law enforcement officer for carrying out a job that he has the right to do, that's not fascism. That's just a due process. I mean, that's what'll happen. Now, again, if he wants to defend the guy, he doesn't think he should be deported, or he thinks the way ICE conduct themselves is bad and this is his way of protesting, then that's fine. But I mean, like, you're gonna get arrested for it, of course. Yeah.
And I approach this as somebody who doesn't support mass deportation. I have a very different stance on immigration than Donald Trump.
Well,
but just to me, it's laughable, this idea.
He's a gay dude, by the way, so of course.
Yeah, and some of the other situations are murkier with the people visiting ICE detention centers, with even Senator Padilla. It's messier. But the idea that I could go up to police, because ICE is law enforcement, whether you hate ICE, whether you want to abolish it, it's federal law enforcement, that I could go up to police arresting someone, link arms with that person and refuse to let go of them and say, I want to see the evidence, I want to see a warrant, blah, blah, blah. You don't have the right to any of that. First of all, ICE can arrest people without a judicial warrant in some contexts, and often with just an administrative warrant. But regardless, it's like, that's not behavior you would get away with ever in any other context. And there's not, some Democratic officials seem to think there's like a special protection that comes from being a politician. That means that if you break the law, you're supposed to get away with it. And
so again, like, listen, I get it's his channel and stuff, but is he in on the debate too, or is he moderating? It's called Destiny versus Actual Justice Warrior, but then right here it's like Brad versus everyone. Is that the name of his channel? Brad versus everyone. Let me look. No, it's just Brad Palumbo. Well, why isn't this video called like Brad versus Destiny and Actual Justice Warrior or something? I just want to hear Sean, that's Actual Justice Warrior, debate Destiny.
Punishing you for it is fascism, but
Yeah.
I'm not really buying that, Sean. And I think they're discrediting the
here it
legitimate
goes. Here comes
grievances they may
Sean.
have in some other cases by crying fascism in instances like this that are just clearly not that, Sean.
This all needs to be understood in the context of the New York City mayoral election. Brad Lander has fallen behind Cuomo. He's fallen behind Mamdani. He needs a big stunt. And reportedly, he was hanging around that facility waiting for his moment for a very long time. As for the asking for a judicial warrant, deportation is typically an administrative procedure. It's not a criminal procedure. So oftentimes ICE uses administrative warrants. It's all like a stunt for the cameras. And of course, all the Democratic faithfuls, except for Andrew Cuomo, who I guess was taking a nap, so he decided to tweet something out. They did their press conferences about this. And of course, he's not charged, which then makes the Trump administration either look like they're backing down or that they just, heavy-handedly detained him for no reason. So it's a mess, but it's completely a political stunt. The guy is able to be deported. Immigration law is the purview of the federal government. You can be mad about that. You can say that you're going to have, when you're mayor, stronger sanctuary city protections, but you can't walk up to law enforcement, again, in almost any context, and try to shove them or grab the suspect. And if a normal person did that, you would be charged with resisting arrest, obstruction, something of the sort.
Charged? Whose decision was that, Sean?
I'm guessing it's on the federal government if they were trying to pursue federal charges. Presumably, you could, in theory, refer him to the local government for charges, but that's never going to happen. And to your point about politicians thinking they have special protections, in some contexts, they do. Politicians, if they're traveling to and from their district, they actually can't be detained by law enforcement, because it's considered the executive restricting their movement between their constituents and between Congress. So they do have some special protections, but this is beyond that, in my opinion. And I don't think a local comptroller has any business here, but a mayoral candidate definitely does.
So Destiny,
also, just as a quick thing on the charging things, I wish more people would just be aware of stuff like this. Just because you get arrested or detained for a crime, to charge somebody and to prosecute somebody, our courthouses only have so much space. And if you're a DA, you're a prosecutor, you're looking at your whole log of stuff and all the cases that are brought before you. And it's okay, well, there's a guy who got arrested for obstructing a thing. Well, what's his record?
Okay. Yeah, I think Sean did a good job of explaining that. I think it's just, I guess it was a political stunt. It's still stupid. You still look like a retard, dude. There's some political stunts I understand, and then there's others that it's you just look like a freaking idiot. No one's gonna respect you. I don't even think hardcore libs are gonna be like, oh my god, I'm gonna vote for that guy. Clear act of desperation, pure cringe. But if you want to see the rest of that, ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to see the rest of that, I am going to leave a link in the description down below. Give this video a like if you liked it. And if you got something to say, leave a comment in the comment section below. If you really liked it, please consider subscribing to my channel. I would really appreciate it. You'll be helping me out a lot. If you want to see more from Actual Justice Warrior or Destiny, I got more content on the screen, along with more videos very similar to this that I think you'll enjoy.